call from an inmate at Adams County Detention Center.
This was bad. Somebody died.
Who died?
I met this person, this female. I thought it was a female. And then I found out on the meeting that it wasn't, and I just snapped, I swear. It was something that was uncontrollable. I can't explain it. I was outside of myself. It was over before I even knew it started.
You tell somebody?
On the afternoon of July 17, 2008, the body of 18-year-old Angie Zapata was discovered by her sister in her Greeley, Colorado apartment. Angie, a transgender female, had been viciously beaten to death, and the car she'd borrowed from her sister was missing. The case remained a whodunit for 2 weeks until police responding to a noise complaint found the missing car and arrested its occupant, Alan Andrade. Andrade eventually confessed to the crime and was charged with first-degree murder. But the defense would claim provocation, saying Angie deceived Alan by not disclosing her true gender. The outcome of the trial had major significance. If convicted, Andrade would be the first person in the nation to be found guilty under a state-level hate crime statute involving the murder of a transgender person.
Greeley is predominantly known for its agriculture around the area. We also are a university town with the University of Northern Colorado, so it's a really fairly conservative community, but there is some influence with the academic community within too, so it has a blend.
Having someone who was transgender was not something that you saw every day here. It wasn't something that people talked about, and it definitely wasn't mainstream at that point.
This morning, police have a suspect in custody in connection with the beating death of a Greeley woman. Investigators say the man told police he beat the woman after finding out that she used to be a he. They're now trying to determine whether this should be considered a hate crime.
Angie Zapata was born a biological male. She grew up mostly in Fort Lupton, Colorado, which is about 30 minutes south of Greeley. Angie Zapata and Alan Andrade met through this website called Moco Space. They then exchanged cell phone numbers and communicated off and on for a few days before meeting up here in Greeley, Colorado. They had stayed together for a couple days in Angie's apartment.
On that third day, Angie left to go babysit her sister's kids. And during that time that she was gone, Alan allegedly started looking around her apartment because he had some suspicions that maybe Angie wasn't being completely honest with him. So when she returned, he questioned Angie whether or not she was female. Angie told him, "I'm all female." Alan, still not believing that, reached out and grabbed Angie in her crotch area, where he discovered what he believed to be a penis.
I think he knew that Angie Zapata was a male the entire time he was there. Angie Zapata's sister, Monica, would tell us that Angie was very straightforward in telling people she met that she was biologically a male because of the dangers involved with that. I theorized that Alan Andrade was coping with something and he ultimately lost it and murdered her with a fire extinguisher.
The police affidavit was just horrible. He beat her to death, and she partially woke up. He heard some a gurgling noise, and he said, "Well, I'm gonna finish her off," and he used a fire extinguisher to kill her for good, to finish her off. Then he stole her purse, a lot of items, and her car, and drove away.
There was a noise violation called in to Thornton Police Department. They found Alan Andrade sitting in that stolen automobile that belonged to Angie's sister, Monica, and he was playing music. They called Greeley Police Department. Well, they detained him, and he was later taken into custody and interrogated regarding Angie's murder.
You guys, like, you're here from Somewhere.
From Greeley.
Right, from Greeley, obviously.
Right.
I get the car in Thornton. Obviously, something happened. Something's going off from Greeley, obviously.
Do you know what that is?
Heck no.
Have you ever lived in Greeley?
No, heck no.
You ever visited Greeley? Never been to Greeley?
Nope.
Alan first was very adamant that he didn't know anything about Angie. He didn't know anything about the situation. After a lengthy interrogation by a skilled detective, he then finally decided to tell the truth, and he told about what happened that night.
The charges that are ultimately filed is first-degree murder after deliberation, bias-motivated crime, as well as vehicle theft and identity theft because he used Monica's credit cards at gas stations down in Denver.
Everyone rise, please. The Honorable Judge, Marcelo Kopkel, presiding.
Good afternoon. If you can all remain standing, let's bring the jury in.
Colorado passed the bias-motivated crime statute, which would be akin to a hate crime statute. This was the first time someone had ever been charged under that statute in a homicide case, which was significant because there was interest from all over the country in the case at the time because it was a murder involving a transgender individual. Being the first one to prosecute a case of this nature was a big deal.
Angie's body was found on July 17th, 2008. If you saw Angie before this day, you would have seen a young, vibrant 18-year-old. But she wasn't an ordinary woman, and you all know this by now. Angie was born male, and she was named Justin. Angie's short life ended that day, suddenly, and it was all at the hands of the defendant. What you're going to know at the end of this case is that this was not a snap decision. The defendant knew for approximately 36 hours that Angie was biologically male. His statements will prove to you that the reason that he did this was because she was transgender. Regardless of who Angie was, ladies and gentlemen, she didn't deserve to die like this. No one deserves to die like this.
This case is not about a judgment of a lifestyle. This case is not about whether Justin Zapata's lifestyle was right or wrong. This case is about a deception and the reaction to that deception. In July of 2008, Alan Andrade met a girl named Angie Zapata. Alan and Angie spent the night together. The next day, Alan and Angie have a conversation, at which point Alan discovers that Angie, this girl that he had met, this girl who he had just spent the last night with, was in fact a man. And Alan snapped.
They were trying to put on a basically gay panic or a trans panic defense, saying that he was tricked, he was duped into not knowing that Angie was transgender.
The gay panic defense is a strategy now outlawed in some parts of this country and the world, where a defense attorney basically blames the victim. And it's the same, she wore a high skirt, that's why she was raped. But this is a calculated strategy that says homophobia is so pervasive in our culture that it's in the jury. And if I use homophobia with the jury, it'll work.
When I got closer to her, I see a spot of blood on her blanket by her head.
Right out of the gate, emotional testimony from family members and friends would take center stage as the prosecution attempted to paint a picture of a young, vibrant girl who was loved and supported by those close to her. The defense tried other tactics, including referring to Angie as him and calling Angie by her birth name, Justin.
Angie was was born biologically male, right, Miss Zapata?
Yes.
Why did you refer to her as Angie?
She felt comfortable. She wanted me to.
Do you know if Angie believes that she was female?
Yes.
Did she live as a woman?
Yes.
Angie had made a decision a long time ago to live as Angie Zapata. Angie was allowed to be Angie with her family. Her entire family embraced her. It was clear that Angie thought that she should be a girl, and that Angie then started living that life once she got old enough to do so.
Miss Zapata, were you always accepting of Angie's decision to live as a woman?
In the beginning, it wasn't so much accepting. It was more protection. Because I knew the people would stare. People would talk about her. And I wanted to protect her from that cruelty. The people that judged her.
There have been anti-trans homicides for years, and increasingly women and people of color, we live in a pretty homophobic culture. This is everywhere, even on the coast. It is not a safe world to be seen as queer or LGBTQ.
That day, we were gonna go shopping because she needed shampoos, and we were gonna discuss because she was gonna come and live with me.
Was that the last time that you ever spoke to your daughter?
Yes.
We made it clear from the prosecution side that that's how she should be referred to. We use that name every time we referred to Angie. We tried to respect her wishes, even in her death, and tried to respect her family. And the defense just did the complete opposite of that.
Do you remember talking to Officer Barber?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And that was on July 17th, 2008?
Yes, ma'am.
You had already learned what happened to to Justin, right?
My sister, yes.
Okay.
Every opportunity the defense had to refer to the victim, they used a male pronoun or referred to him as Justin Zapata, even during examination of witnesses or cross-examination of witnesses.
And you told Officer Barber that you got the text message on the 15th where Justin asked for about $10 for gas money, right?
Where my sister asked for $10 in gas money?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that pronoun battle at trial was, it was glaring.
When was the last time that you saw Angie?
The night before she was killed.
What did Angie tell you about who was staying with her?
She told me that some guy was staying with her for a couple days. She told me it was an older guy.
What did you think about this when she told you that?
Kind of awkward.
Why?
Because she didn't tell me who the guy was.
Did you think it was weird that she needed to go home and check on this person?
Yes.
The family's testimony at trial was integral. Monica got on the stand, testified as kind of the matriarch in the family of the siblings that Angie was honest with everyone about who she was, and that Alan Andrade knew well before he murdered her that she was transgender. Did most people close to you, or did people that knew Angie, did they know that he was Justin also?
Yes.
Did you have concerns for her as she got older, acting as a female but being born as Justin? Or living as a female, did you have concerns about that?
Yes.
Okay. Did you discuss your concerns with Angie about that?
I did.
What did you tell her?
I used to tell her to be careful because the world didn't accept her. I said there's certain people that will accept you, Angie, and there's certain people that's not going to accept you.
It was emotional. Both of Angie's sisters were tearful on the stand. They talked about how much they loved her, how much of a kind person she was, how much of a fun-loving person she was, and they were just struck by the fact that she was just brutalized, just beaten to death.
Do you recall July 17th, 2008?
Every day.
And on that date, was Angie supposed to babysit for you?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury what happened that day?
I called her, because my sister was sleeping a lot.
and I forget what time she had to come babysit. I kept calling and she wouldn't answer. So I started calling her friends. I got this gutty feeling, and I don't know how to explain what a gutty feeling is. Maybe a mother gutty feeling, because so many years that I've taken care of my family, I don't know why I remembered I had her key, and why I had her key, don't know. But I had a key.
You could really see the anguish in Monica's face and feel that same anguish in her testimony of having to come on that scene and find her sister after she's been murdered.
We got to her apartment, and I'm going up the stairs, and I went to turn the key and open the door, and I seen her on the floor with the blanket over her. When I got closer to her, I see that there's a spot on the blanket.
Take your time. There's Kleenex for you.
A spot of blood on her blanket by her head. And I went and picked it up, and the blanket stuck to her face because the blood's dried. And I take the blanket off of her, and my sister's face was swollen, and her face was smashed in.
They took him into custody, and the questioning of him began.
Do you know that individual?
No,
I've never seen that. Never seen that picture.
Eventually, he sang like a canary.
Angie Zapata's cause of death was blunt force trauma, and throughout the trial, prosecutors would continue to highlight the sheer brutality of this crime. Perhaps the single biggest piece of evidence that would drive home just how savage it was, pictures and video of the crime scene that were shown to the jurors.
Do you know what that is?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
This is a CD which contains the crime scene video.
And is it have you watched that?
Yes, I have.
And how do you know that's the one that you watched?
I initialed it and put the date on it when I watched it.
Okay.
I went to the crime scene, and I did not think this was a heat of passion crime. This was a first-degree murder because of all the evidence at the scene and what we knew about Angie.
What did you find when you arrived on scene?
Initially, when we pulled up, there was two women outside, obviously distraught, directing us upstairs towards an apartment. As we peered through the screen door, you could see somebody lying on the ground. As I entered the room, it was a living room. The patient was pulseless, apneic, not breathing. There was a large amount of blood around the patient's head. There appeared to be some sort of trauma to the face that was either blunt or penetrating trauma. There was some deformity towards the face.
This is a photograph taken of the living room of the apartment number 8. This is the victim, Angie Zapata, as she laid on the floor in the living room.
Monica had loaned Angie her car on somewhat of a permanent basis. So that very morning when the body was discovered, Monica realized that her vehicle was not present at the apartment.
When I arrived on scene, I contacted the victim's sister, Monica Murguia. She told me that when she went into the apartment to check on her sister, she couldn't locate the car keys to the vehicle that she lets the victim drive. So she believed that whoever did that to her sister also had the vehicle. She told me it was a 2003 green PT Cruiser.
But for those 2 weeks, we were working it like any other homicide case. We were working it from a known perspective of our victim, who our victim was known to associate with, who she was interacting with at that time, just hoping that that vehicle would be contacted or located by law enforcement to help us lead to a potential suspect.
I was dispatched on a loud noise complaint. Upon arrival, as I was driving southbound on Hoffman Way, I could hear a loud stereo coming from a vehicle that I identified as a green PT Cruiser. I then drove into the parking lot towards the vehicle and trained my spotlight on it and called out with the plate. I noticed that there was beer cans laying outside the vehicle, and I noticed that the occupant was in the driver's seat. And I approached the vehicle from the passenger side to see into the car to see what he was doing in there. I noticed he was making rapid movements underneath the seat as if he was reaching for something underneath the seat.
And what did you do at that point?
At that point, fearing that he may be reaching for a weapon, I placed him at gunpoint and ordered him to show his hands.
And as that happened, did you learn any new information?
At the same time as I was giving him the commands, dispatch aired to the other officers who were responding to cover me that the vehicle was related to a homicide in Greeley.
When I pulled up to the location, I saw a PT Cruiser with the door open. Officer Thomas had his gun out, and as did Officer Stricker. Commands were given. He complied with the commands. He was handcuffed and taken into custody.
We received a call from the Thornton Police Department in very early morning hours, 2 to 3 a.m. So I, in the middle of the night, grabbed my entire case file, which consisted of about two or three boxes of just case notes and binders that we had put together, and I responded down to Thornton.
With regards to People 64, what is that?
This is a DVD of my interview with Mr. Andrade. Let me show you a picture of somebody here. Do you know that individual? Never seen that person before. Okay. Do you need to look at it a little? No, I've never seen that. Never seen that picture. Okay.
The questioning of him began. Eventually, he sang like a canary.
Is it your vehicle?
No.
Okay, whose vehicle is it?
I have no clue.
This person is the person who owns that PT Cruiser. This person was found dead in Greeley.
Oh, damn.
Only hours after his arrest on July 30th, 2008, Alan Andrade was interviewed by Detective Greg Tharp of the Greeley Police Department. While the interview was thorough and methodical, the trial judge ruled that only the first 39 minutes would be admissible in court. That's because Andrade had very subtly invoked his right to remain silent. But what was played for the jury showed a man who seemed to think he could get away with murder, tripping on his own lies.
You're just here on a warrant, is that right? Just an unpaid traffic ticket or something that you have? All right, no problem then with that. Let me ask you real quick. Have you been the victim of any crime tonight or in recent weeks here? Nobody's harmed you, nobody's victimized you in any way?
No.
Okay. Like in any interview, the strategy begins with trying to establish a very quick rapport in an introduction in a very non-confrontational manner in hopes that your suspect is ultimately going to waive Miranda rights since he's in custody here on this warrant. Obviously, the one thing that I'm not going to confront him with right off the bat is the homicide. So we talk a little bit about the car. Can you tell me a little bit about this car that you were in tonight that Thornton Police contacted you?
I could tell you, I don't know. I mean...
Is it your vehicle?
No.
Okay, whose vehicle is it?
I have no clue who it is.
Okay, how did you get it?
I acquired it. How I acquired it?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much dumb bad luck, I guess you can call it now. I was walking around the neighborhood, not really my neighborhood, and I got a bad habit from when I'm younger, looking at vehicles, bad habit, and so looking at whatever. And then when I do that, come across keys, a dumbass me figures, oh, well, you know, it's a cool little ride, 2-3 days, has some gas in it, so I take it.
Okay. So you got into the car just looking to do an auto prowl, grab some stereos or money or whatever might be left behind in it. This is somebody who's been down this road before, maybe not at this level, but certainly has been on the other side of an interrogation table. So he didn't appear scared. I think he was making a valiant effort to try to downplay his involvement. Wrong place, wrong time, kind of, you know, damn my bad luck was kind of his approach to this. Let me show you a picture of somebody here. Do you know that individual? Mm-hmm. Never seen that person before? Okay. Do you need to look at it a little? No, I've never seen that. Never seen that picture? Okay. Well, I'm gonna explain to you, because you have a sense of what's going on in a bigger scheme. Okay. This person is the person who owns that PT Cruiser.
Oh, okay.
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 This person was found dead in Greeley on the 17th of July.
Oh, damn.
So that's obviously, you know, a connection as to why we want to come and talk to you.
They had a lot of information that they didn't want to let him know they had, how many times that him and Angie had communicated through Moco Space or text. They knew they had communicated a lot. And you could also tell when Angie and Alan were together because there was no communication via text or via Moco Space.
Do you access the internet from your phone at all?
I have.
Okay. Do you belong to any kind of those MySpace type of things or Facebook? No? Have you ever heard of something called Moco Space?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever used Moco Space?
Yeah.
From your phone?
Yeah.
Okay. Who have you talked to on Moco Space?
Talk to just emails here and there.
Okay. This person was on Moco Space. Any reason to believe that you would have communicated with this person?
No, heck no.
No? Okay. Is there any reason to believe that any of your physical DNA is going to be found at our crime scene?
No.
Okay. We've looked at this individual's phone records. After this person died, we got phone records for that person, and your phone number is showing up on her phone records many times.
So you guys are just laying all on me, man.
It was at this point in the interview where he starts to change his body posture. He's hanging his head, his shoulders are dropping, he's kind of going into that seated fetal position there. This is Justin Zapata. Justin Zapata lives in East Greeley. Justin Zapata passes himself off as a woman. I have a real strong suspicion that this person is dead now because they weren't completely honest with somebody. This guy was lying to people and putting people in a bad position time and time again. And I think ultimately that's what caught up to this person, is that he painted somebody into a bad spot and somebody had a reaction to it.
The police interrogation, it was rather brilliantly done. The lead detective basically played the role of, well, I agree with you. I mean, she lied to you. She screwed you over. I can understand why you got mad.
Alan, look at me. You're not a murderer.
No, I don't know.
Okay? You're not a murderer.
No.
But we need to talk about this. You didn't plan this. This wasn't anything that you had in your mind. This wasn't anything that you were trying to lie in wait and harm somebody. You weren't trying to victimize anybody. Something happened to your brother.
Yeah, I'm dead.
During the course of the interview, Alan Andrade said, "I'm done." The judge found at a hearing that that's him invoking his right to remain silent, which we argued about, obviously, but the judge found that way, so we had to use the 39 minutes we had.
I took it more as he's done. He can't hold off the lies any longer. From that point on, with continued questioning of his involvement, he goes and gives us a full confession of his involvement. The court rules that the portion of that interview beyond that point was thrown out, was inadmissible. The jail calls, in essence, brought back what was lost in the interrogation from that 39-minute mark forward.
Andrade made a lot of incriminating statements that showed his hatred towards homosexuals.
My son's all dying.
Oh, he's dying. It's gay. Gay things need to die.
While it was uncertain whether or not Andrade would testify in his own defense, the prosecution would make sure the jury heard even more from the defendant in his own words. In fact, it might have been the most compelling evidence of the trial: jailhouse phone calls between Andrade and his two ex-girlfriends.
Can you tell the jury how you know Mr. Andrade?
We were together. At the time, we weren't together. He was just staying with me. But we were together for about a year and a half, 2 years.
When you say together, do you mean dating? Or?
Yes.
You mentioned that you had spoken to him on jail calls. Do you recall speaking to him several times after his arrest?
Yes.
Andrade made numerous calls from jail, and we got to play those for the jury, which I think was really strong evidence of his state of mind.
I should have done a lot of things different, you know. But shoulda, woulda, coulda, did, whatever.
I know.
Ain't no going back now. I'll deal with 10 years. I'll deal with 10. Even 15, I'll do that. But all this life, all this 85 years, man. I mean, it's not like I just went up to a school teacher and shot her in the head, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Went up to like a law-abiding straight citizen that don't, you know what I mean? And just killed cold-blooded murder somebody, you know?
I think the jury were kind of overwhelmed by the brutality of it, overwhelmed by his lack of a better word, gall. He basically admitted to killing in a horrible manner this young woman.
Do you know Alan Ray Andrade?
I do.
How do you know him?
He's my ex-boyfriend.
So after the defendant was arrested on July 30th, did you speak to him via telephone?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, per stipulation, we've agreed to admit People 65, and I'd like to play that call for the jury at this time.
This was bad.
What'd you do?
It was a mistake, totally, you know, but when it happened, it happened.
What'd you do?
Somebody died.
Who died?
Somebody.
Who?
When I wasn't talking to you, I started trying to meet people, and I met this person, this female, or I thought it was a female, and then I found out on a meeting that it wasn't, and I just snapped, I swear.
You killed somebody?
I can't say that. We're on the phone.
You're gonna be gone forever. Like, you don't realize that. Why, like, babe, like, I know, I understand that you got mad and you snapped, but when you're doing that, like, why couldn't you just suck it up just like a minute and just leave? Like, after you realize that why could you think to me, like, when you're doing that, like, think that, you know, you were gonna be out of my life forever?
I don't know. It happened so freaking fast and so hard. They couldn't stop it, I swear.
Andrade made a lot of incriminating statements that showed his hatred towards homosexuals. He made statements such as killing a pink shirt wearing.
Erica's not kind of got me mad yesterday.
Why?
Because he was like, what's up with your boyfriend? I was like, what?
Who?
Erica's mad.
Hey, well, tell him I'll kill him too.
Shut up.
Hey, lucky you.
Babe, don't say that.
Pink shirt wearing.
There was one phone call that really stands out to me where he's talking to his girlfriend. She lets him know that her phone's about to die in case they get disconnected. And something as ambiguous as that statement, he followed that up with, that's gay. And then he says right after that, gay things must die.
My son's all dying.
It's always dying. It's gay.
All right,
Gay things need to die.
He made it very clear that he was extremely homophobic. Once we listened to his jailhouse calls while this case was pending, that it was clear it was a hate crime, and so that was the obvious choice to make.
So the prosecution is resting their case in chief. The defense may call their first witness.
Defense strategy was she tricked him almost to the point where, well, it was almost understandable that he lost his temper. There was an implication that he was struck by homophobic panic.
Based on your observations of Justin, just by seeing Justin, just by looking at Justin, would you be able to tell that Justin was a man or not?
I thought he was, to answer your question, probably no.
Probably no?
No, sir.
During these months that you lived with Justin, do you remember if he would put on makeup before he would leave the apartment?
Yes.
Did you guys ever go out to any bars or restaurants or anything?
Yes.
And at these bars and restaurants that you would go out to, did you ever personally hear Justin introduce himself to other people as Justin or a male?
No.
Was there anything about how Justin walked or his mannerisms that would indicate to you that this was a male, or did it all seem to be female stuff?
He carried himself as a female, walked like a female, talked like a female.
My opinion about Alan Andrade was that he was curious. And do I know whether or not he knew Angie was transgender? I don't know that for a fact. Do I believe that he probably did? Yes.
Mr. Andrade, have you made a decision about whether you want to testify or not?
Yes, I am.
And what is your decision?
No, I don't.
I was not at all surprised in this case that he didn't testify. I felt like the evidence was pretty clear and that his team had a job to try to distract the jury from that evidence. I think putting him on the stand wouldn't have done him any good.
Mr. Andrade, if you could please rise with your attorneys. The verdict reads, with regard to count number 1, with regard to first-degree murder, we, the jury, find the defendant
Not only was Alan Andrade facing life in prison without parole, he was also looking at becoming a footnote in American history as the first person to be convicted under a state-level hate crime statute for murdering a transgender person. With closing arguments, the defense would have one more chance to try to persuade the jury to perhaps find Andrade guilty of a lesser crime. But the prosecution would strike first.
Engraved in stone on the Supreme Courthouse of the United States are the words equal protection under law. And that's what this case is about. This case is also about right versus wrong, and it's about protecting all members of our community. Alan Andrade decided he should make the decision as to who lives and who dies. He crushed Angie's skull in with bone-crushing blows from a fire extinguisher. His intent is seen at the crime scene. His intent is heard in the jail calls. Hitting someone time after time in the forehead with a fire extinguisher shows exactly what your intent was. It is nothing less than first-degree murder. It's clear from the evidence the defendant knew well before he committed murder that Angie was transgender. So if the defendant knew Angie was a biological male well before he chose to murder her, this is nothing less than first-degree murder. Saying that this is heat of passion is allowing someone to be killed for living as who they are. And the law is meant to protect everyone. And no one deserves to die like this. Find him guilty of all counts. Thank you.
We told you from the beginning that this case was about deception and Mr. Andrade's immediate reaction to that deception. Mr. Andrade met Justin Zapata, but when he met him as Angie, and he believed that the person he was going to spend time with in Greeley was Angie. What you need to decide is what was in his head at the time these things happened.
I always worry when a jury goes to deliberate that they may not see things the way that I do when I prosecute or defend a case, especially when they came back in just around 2 hours. I was actually shocked and worried. You kind of start to panic and you wonder, did they fall for all of that distraction, or did they actually follow the law?
It's my understanding that a verdict was reached as to each count. Mr. Andrade, if you can please rise with your attorneys. The verdict reads, with regard to count number 1, with regard to first-degree murder, we, the jury, find the defendant, Alan Andrade, guilty of first-degree murder. With regard to count number 2, bias-motivated crime, we, the jury, find the defendant, Alan Andrade, guilty. With regard to aggravated motor vehicle theft in the first degree, we, the jury, find the defendant, Alan Andrade, guilty. And with regard to count number 4, regarding identity theft, we, the jury, find the defendant, Alan Andrade, guilty of identity theft.
When they said guilty, it was a big sigh of relief. I don't want to say it was a good feeling because it still means someone was murdered, but I felt happy for the family to have some closure, I guess is the best way to put that.
The court is going to impose a life sentence in the Colorado Department of Corrections. That is, that you spend the remaining natural life in the Department of Corrections without the ability to parole. I hope as you're spending the remaining part of your life, your natural life in the Department of Corrections, that you every day think about the violence and the brutality that you caused on this fellow human being and the pain that you have caused not only your family but the family of Angie Zapata.
Justice never replaces a life, but it was what we had hoped for in that final outcome, and the family was certainly satisfied with the outcome.
Handling the Angie Zapata case did make me feel like I made a difference. Getting a guilty verdict on first-degree murder and bias-motivated crime for the first time in the United States. But I think if it's presented right and law enforcement does the right thing, that you should be able in today's society to get equal protection under the law for everyone, no matter what their beliefs are, no matter what their race is. Everyone deserves that, and everyone should get that.
The slow, painful, difficult work of social change is not automatic. It doesn't just over time get better for minorities or LGBTQ people, women, racial minorities. You have to fight. You have to fight all the time.
Looking back at the case now and at the conviction that we received, it makes me wonder how far we've come as a society. And when I reflect on that, I actually don't know the answer. I feel that in my heart, I want to say that we've moved forward and that this kind of defense wouldn't play out today and that people wouldn't be distracted by it. But really, I don't know. I think it depends on where you're located, who your jury is, and it could still happen today, and that makes me sad.
Alan Andrade is currently serving his life sentence at Lyman Correctional Facility in Colorado. He's now 44 years old. In July of 2020, Colorado became the 11th state to ban the LGBTQ panic defense in the courtroom. I'm Ashleigh Banfield. Thanks for watching.